drink and talk to people.
Yeah, basically.
With no plan in mind.
Yeah.
Do you have your, like, are you where you have your animals? Like, can you show stuff up?
No, but I did bring down a couple things because I did see that you guys,
Yeah, we usually like to have some animals.
Yeah.
Nothing
crazy, but I took what I could.
Yeah, well, some is better than none.
Are we live now?
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, so we are live. Hey, everybody.
We got one person.
Yep. Sweet. Yeah, warms up a little bit. And because usually we're 10 minutes late, so.
So you're on
I think
time.
people have just figured out they'll wait the 10 minutes and then start. But thanks for making time, Joe. We appreciate it.
No, of course. I appreciate you guys having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. So here's a maybe a little known fact or maybe well-known fact. I have no idea. But your podcast was the very first thing we ever did after filming the show that had to do with the show and wasn't directly like something people we know or, you know,
really
outside of our bubble. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Animal Planet didn't make you do like some type of
you were
PR
the first
tour
podcast we had, like, somebody had reached. Oh shit.
Oh, he's like, click. Oh shit.
We lost you there for a second.
Really? I don't know.
Yeah, no, you were the first one who reached out, like, once, because I think you had filmed or did your YouTube video. It had aired already, right? Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, by the time you were on the podcast, the show had already gone through most of the first season, I believe.
Not a good start. Oh, there we go. I think. Hello?
Are we back?
I think so.
I believe so. There we go. We were on the wrong Wi-Fi. The sled dog hadn't been fed.
Canadian Wi-Fi hamster had.
They get fed maple syrup when we ran low.
Unfortunately, has now been fed to a snake.
Yeah.
And Michael said, "We still see you, Joe, but Greg and Chris are frozen." And I was just sitting here like an idiot. So hopefully it wasn't just me.
Yeah. No, it wasn't just you. So yeah, so as we were saying, you were actually the first podcast, any kind of outside interviewee type stuff that we had done with the show, about the show after we started filming. It was pretty quick right after. I think it was either just aired or was about to air.
Yeah, I don't remember when it would have been, but we aired in August, and I feel like it was September or October.
Yeah, that's right.
That you would have reached out to.
But not in Canada.
Yeah, I know you were probably not even halfway through the first season airing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So since we've talked to you, how have things been going? Obviously, you don't have trade shows to be selling animals at, but what are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very different not going to reptile shows at least like a couple times a month and traveling and talking and meeting everyone and putting corn snakes in people's hands. But it's been, I don't know, in the US here, it's been really, really great as far as selling animals online. I think everyone's really adjusted. And as far as the people buying, more and more people I feel are buying online than ever before. And I think it really works out as long as you're, prepared for everything. But right now is also the bulk of the hatching season. So that's kind of where I am now, kind of drowning in babies and trying to. It's that terrible transition period when you need to split up everyone and start labeling all the snakes and giving them ID numbers and all the stuff. That's kind of a pain in the ass when you got to do it 200 times.
So you do a lot of record keeping with your snakes. Do you keep? I know that back in the day, guys used to keep a lot of little cards, index cards, writing every feeding, every shed, all that stuff. I'm terrible for not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you kind of it seems like you lose some of that. But I tried to do as much as possible, especially with putting everything in a spreadsheet so that people know that where their baby came from, what the parents are. What that pairing was, when it was paired up, when she laid, when it hatched, stuff like that. I try my best to keep up with that. And then for the babies, it's index cards or a piece of masking tape. And every time they feed. And that's pretty much it. I mean, feeding is the most important to me. And then it'll also have their birth date and the genetics involved. But so it's simple, but it's enough information.
Everybody's got different stuff they do. There's some apps and stuff people will follow, and for me, I mean, I'll track the hatch dates, all that stuff, and that's really for me, it's the most important thing. And all the other stuff's great information to have, and the lineage, obviously, the animals. I know my animals that I've gotten, where I've gotten them from, all that stuff. I know that stuff. I've got records kept in computers. I can dig it up if I need to. But as far as the actual, I used to stick little index cards to every bin and keep track of every feeding. And now I just keep track of if they fed, I mark it off. If they haven't, I mark it off. But it's not quite to the same level. It's too much work for stuff that isn't really super important. Once they're regularly eating up to speed, and once they get 4 or 5 meals at least, and they're regularly eating, then I can think about selling them. I don't even think about it until that point. So
generally I do three frozen thawed meals in a row. If they take 3 off the bat, then I'll put it online, and by the time it ships out, we're probably looking at 5 frozen thawed meals in a row. If an animal skips a meal in between there, I'll definitely keep it for longer. So say it takes a meal, it's off of it, then I want to see it go like 5 consecutive times after that. Yeah,
same here. If anything skips me, any meals, I just put them aside, and I've got a separate area for the ones that are off feeding, and then once they get back in the scheme of things.
So
what got you into reptiles?
In general, reptiles, I mean, my dad had snakes all growing up and stuff like that, and we were always outside, and there was always garter snakes around. And I used to go to the White Plains Reptile Show, which is it's a big show here if you're on the East Coast of the United States. It was, I mean, really one of the earliest shows that there were, and we used to go there all the time. I mean, I was probably just 8 years old or so. So, wasn't completely into it until, say, I was 21 or so, when I was in college. And that's when I started breeding ball pythons. And now I've been breeding snakes for about 7 years. So
I've heard of
relatively new.
White Plains, is it? I have heard of it before. Reptile Basics, I know they're always there, and that's one of our suppliers. Goes a
dropped
it. Not the first time we've had that happen.
Usually on this end.
Usually it's on this end, and somebody's holding one of us and drops us, and not the phone.
Or somebody's bleeding.
How big, like in terms of like number of vendors, how big is that show?
Oh, I wish I knew offhand. And last year they have a main room, which is like a really small local like basketball arena size. And that floor is all the bleachers are back and stuff like that. I mean, there's probably, I would hate to ballpark it and be wrong, but I want to say like 90 or something.
Like 60 tables, 70 tables?
At least. Yeah. And then there's an annex room, which is another like conference room off of that. And then last year they opened up the basement, which had probably another 25 vendors at least in. So
crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's a big show, especially for not being something like Tinley or Daytona. Those are like the real big shows.
Well, I think those little shows are ones to be at too, because people are so gung-ho like that it's something local that they come to, and usually a lot of vendors do really well at those small shows. I know Reptile Basics is pretty big, so for him to do a show that's, you know, considered smaller, obviously it's a profitable show for him. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely still probably top 5 or so reptile shows. I mean, Pomona, Tinley, Daytona, and then you're looking at like Hamburg and White Plains. So it's still kind of in that top tier. But I mean, I do well at our local show. Like I do well at the small venues in which families are just coming by and getting a pet, because corn snakes are a great first pet. So it's, I did terrible at Tinley. I mean, I've done much better, you know, at my local show than I actually have at some of the big shows, just because that's usually the bigger investment guys, the ball python morphs and different rarer species. I have a lot of high end corn snakes, but even for corn snakes, high end really isn't an investor type thing.
Yeah, but there's some to be said of getting the exposure, even if you're not selling at those shows. The fact that you can afford to vend at those shows, and even if you're handing out business cards, I think it does show that you're in the business, you know, for long term versus, you know, the local shows. I find that you get a lot of guys who are brand new to the business. They're looking to sell that one clutch they had, and you probably won't see them again.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of turnover, but there's also, I mean, on the East Coast and in the US, there's so many different shows, and you get to know and you get to see like the same guys every single month or even every single weekend. So you always have your core of people who stick around, and it kind of turns into a little community. I'm sure you guys have something similar at your show.
Yeah, we've got that, but we also notice, like, you know, I've been doing it for, I don't know, probably at least 15 years. Like,
you're old.
Yeah, Chris is older, just saying. But it's funny because we always like reminisce on all the people. Like, you know, there's always that core group have been there like through most of it. But it's funny counting on the hands the people that you remember that were like gun ho, and then, you know, maybe a couple of years in, then they disappeared. But that's what I remember, is the amount of people that came into the industry thinking that it was like, you know, big money. Reptiles are going to get you rich, and then you don't see them a couple of years from now.
Yeah, and I think people usually get pretty up in arms when people come in with an attitude like that. But I think it always kind of works itself out, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
We all see it come and go. Yeah, they come in like gangbusters. They're going to change the world. They've got all these big plans. Those are usually the people, the first ones to go, right? It's usually give them a couple of seasons and they're done. People that kind of grow slow and steady over time, build up the experience and slowly work with different species or whatever. Those are the ones that last long term.
Yeah,
I think so. Get to that point. People just want to jump, run before they walk, right? And that never works.
Yeah, and I think people initially, you see some dollar signs and stuff like that, and it may seem lucrative, but then you realize kind of what goes into it, and it's not easy by any stretch.
Yeah, well, there's that meme that's going around. If you want to become a millionaire in reptiles, you got to be a billionaire first.
Yeah,
that
was an old joke. The quickest way to make $5 million or $2 million in the reptile hobby is to start with 4.
Yeah. It's few and far between who actually can say that they've made a legitimate business where it's paying the bills versus, just covering your costs and feeding your animals. I've been doing it, like I said, I think it's got to be close to 20 years now, but most of that time was doing it out of my garage, and I was doing it for fun money, just for beer money. So it's definitely tough to make a living. So
yeah, I think that
friends.
The friends jokes. So actually, Danielle and Michael, they were big fans of the show. They've been every one of our lives. So we had actually sort of steered them your way, and we're really happy that they managed to hook up with you and got a real quality snake from you. They've been super happy with. But Michael's got a question that he was asking if you were going to do Oaks this month before they canceled it.
Yeah, so Oaks is the reptile show, which is the one. It's probably 20 minutes away. So I pretty much roll out of bed and I can show up, and it's not a big deal, and we do well at it. So, but I mean, I haven't even thought about doing a show since February. I mean, it's just not at all worth it.
No,
to be honest.
And it's funny because selling online for us, even like it has tapered off from like the high points of like the COVID numbers going up, but it's still doing way better than it was in years past. Like, it'll be curious to see. Like, I don't know what to think of trade shows moving forward, whether like they're going to be beneficial or if people have just moved to like online is easier. I don't have to even get off my couch to like go to a show. Like, it'll be interesting what happens, and also how long it's going to be before we're even able to have trade shows. Like, our restrictions were kind of relaxed a bit here, but now we're getting numbers increasing. And they haven't really talked about I think we're in phase 2.
We're in phase 2? Yeah, I don't know phase.
But, we're limited to 50 people in public gatherings, unless it's a protest, and then I guess they're allowed
150 or
yeah,
I don't know what it is.
That's weird.
It's changing all the time.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting when we're finally allowed and what happens at those trade shows.
What do you think?
Well, we have Daytona coming up here, and it's still on because it's in Florida, and there's not many rules in Florida. So
Florida man is alive and well.
Yes. So people have been begging me to go to that, but I don't see it being really worth it to go.
So are you planning to, like, were you a vendor for that show?
No, so I was just gonna go just for the hang. I mean, Tinley is kind of the same thing. If last year I was able to get a table, but realistically, I think like even this year I'll probably just go to hang out. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to go just to hang out at both those shows.
Yeah.
Those are on the list for sure to do. We've had some invites for those shows too. It's just a matter of getting out there and making the time to do it. But yeah, that would be a lot of fun to go and see just to do it. But yeah, I think myself that the shows are going to be fine. Like, people are going to want. There's always, you want to see, touch, be around, like to see the animals in person. So there's that portion of it that there's the attraction to that people are always going to want to do. The online stuff's convenient, but I still think you're going to get people that are always going to want to get out. They're going to want to go see the animals, to go to the expos, to chat in person with their friends. And I think over time, with being segregated this much for this long, it's convenient at first, and then it's like you kind of miss the interactions with actual people in person. And I think there's going to be more of a push towards that once it's back open. That's my thought anyway. We'll see how it goes.
Well, James Lewis kind of said the same thing. I think the good shows will still be around. Folks love going to a show and seeing each other in person. And there's something to be said for the vendors. I mean, it's not necessarily just about the sales. Yeah. Like, I miss going to the bar on Friday and Saturday night with all the other vendors and just talking shop for the, 3 or 4 hours. So definitely missing out on that.
Even just being as a buyer, just talking to certain breeders or people that have certain animals that you've talked to online, to actually speak to them in person, to have more of a conversation with about their animals. For me, that's a big part of it.
And I know we have a lot of like the older breeders aren't necessarily online, and they really depend on the show circuit and stuff like that. So there really are some guys that you can only get in contact with at those shows unless it's through like email or fauna or something like that, which just isn't the same at all.
Older than me, even.
Yeah, older than Chris. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Chris the other day, and right now we would have done, I'm pretty sure, 7 or 8 shows by now, and we haven't had any. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's it will be great when it comes back, and I'm sure it will come back strong. I just hope a lot of those show promoters are able to tough it through and keep on keeping on, and we're able to. I know the herp shows are going on in the south, in the southeast of the United States here, so they're. Have you seen or
heard of any, like, there's those online expos that they were trying to do? I don't know how that even can be a thing, but any thoughts, or have you seen any of that stuff?
Yeah, it seems as though a couple of people have given it a try. I know one of them ended up getting canceled like the day before or something like that.
Oh, really?
One of them I think was actually happening the same time that I was putting on our live event, and like everyone.
Oh yeah, you guys did one, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did Crittercon live, which was basically a bunch of reptile educators getting together and having an online education show. So they were able to get a little bit of revenue and kind of get their fix as far as educating, because these guys can't have public gatherings, stuff like that. So they were totally out of a job and out of doing their shows, and they get, for us, we can adjust and we can sell animals online, but it's not as easy for people like reptile educators, which I think is super important. I mean, that's something that you guys do obviously as well. So so it was nice to help them out. But there was also an online reptile show that same day, and it looks like there was one that was successful and people sold animals and stuff like that. I mean, it's obviously not the same, but if people sold animals, and I mean, that's great. I mean, and I just like people trying things, right? It's nice to see people try to adjust and try to make the most out of their situations.
We both respond as
I mean, that's really all that you can do is make the best of it. Make the best of it, and carry on. And like we promote a show as well, the WCRE. We've got in Red Deer, the biggest reptile only expo in Canada. And we were supposed to be doing one in Medicine Hat this year. So we branched out to a smaller community, just, a few hours away, underrepresented. There hasn't really been a lot of stuff out that way, and we were excited to do it. So felt a bad time, but we're still looking forward to moving forward and doing these shows again. So
yeah, like for us, it's kind of nice because, we are promoting the shows, but it's kind of like an enjoyment for us, not really about the making money. But I know that in the US, a lot of these bigger shows, like that's kind of the sole incomes for some of those promoters. So it makes it harder for them. Like us, we're just biding our time and we're all right because we're not relying on it. But for those guys who like, one or two shows a year is their income for the year, that definitely makes it tough.
Yeah, and I mean, I know guys, especially in February and March, where things were kind of shaky here and shows were getting canceled like the week before. I mean, these guys had already put all their money in advertising and stuff like that. And like we were lucky with that because we were biding our time hoping that the show would go on, but we're not spending money on advertising. Like Tinley, like we knew a bunch of people that were on the road to Tinley and found out like, the day before that it got canceled. Like, but it's not their fault. Like, it's just crappy timing, I guess. And talk to those guys who ended up in Tinley. They all got together, and I think they all had a blast regardless. So
they did, yeah. The guys that we knew,
as one does, yeah.
We would have been there with bells on if we were already planning for sure. I mean, you got to make the best of it. So
we were fortunate that we had money to the advertising at our show. One was supposed to be
first week of July, and the next one was going to be the third week in August. But by then, you knew those shows were really crapshoots if they were going to happen or not. So we just held off.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, in your perspective, I mean, what steps are you taking going forward? When do you think you can squeeze in a show?
Well, we only do the two shows. Like, our plan is, like, we've done the one show one time a year for 10 years. So it's always the third week in August. So there was no point in, like, rescheduling it. It's just going to be, we'll move it to next year. And this new show we hadn't done, so it's the same thing.
We were scheduled around. There's up here, a lot of the shows in Western Canada are run by either nonprofits or reptile clubs. So we didn't want to step on toes or, conflict with the dates. You don't want to have like back-to-back weekends where people are having to travel hours each way to try and make shows or decide which show to do. You want to make sure that people can do all the shows so that everybody kind of works together. So with, the ones in Western Canada, like in BC, and then Calgary here and Edmonton and Red Deer, we try and space it out. So we didn't want to reschedule a show that may conflict with another show if they're going to, because the other shows sort of have a spring and a fall show, and ours is sort of in the summertime. So we didn't really want to compete with that. So it's a matter of we'll just, push it off till next year.
Yeah, that's some Canadian politeness. We have show promoters here on the East Coast where like they're dueling, right? They'll have shows opposite weekends in the same venues and stuff like that, or they'll have shows in the same state on the same weekend. And
it's kind of interesting. So out east in Canada, there's way more shows, and it seems like the vendors really have to compete for sales. Whereas it's interesting for the show we put on, it's actually quite friendly. Like, there's so many ball python breeders, but, they want to be next to their buddies. So you've got like tables on tables of like competing vendors, but one guy runs out of it and they tell the customer that was a potential sale to them to, go see their buddy 2 tables down. So I think we got a little niche market here in the sense that everybody kind of, for the most part, gets along. So the shows are usually pretty fun. It's not like cutthroat.
Yeah, I think in a good mature sector of the industry, like I don't know, it seems like a lot of us have our place. Like corn snake guys, I know who works with what. If I don't work with something, I can refer someone somewhere else, and someone who has quality animals. I feel like we try not to bang or be in the same lane too much.
Yeah, and it's funny. That's what, I don't know if you touched on that too. Is that we had some of the folks from out east come out and be blown away by how sort of friendly we were. Like without hesitation, people recommending other vendors with the same stuff. Hey, I don't have it, but this guy over here you can talk to, or this guy over here. Just a different mentality, I guess. I don't know. I guess it's weird, but I think it's the only way to do it, and that's how you grow it as a community, is all working together, right? So it just makes sense.
I mean, they're the guys that you're having beers with after.
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly. So
they're some of the only people on the planet that do the same exact thing you do or understand what you do. Like,
it's a niche hobby, and it's even though it's becoming more mainstream and there's more money and stuff in it for some people, but it's just long term. You have to look at the big picture, and that person's going to remember that you were a good guy, you gave them good information, and you sent them in a direction to a good animal. So who are they going to talk to again? That guy. I trust that guy because he steered me the right direction. So it all comes back around. And if you're looking at long term, that all pays off in the end long term. So, you just be a good guy and be good about it, and it all works out in the end.
100%.
We got some questions here. Joe, what's your favorite snake you've ever bred?
So my favorite snake.
Another snake. Let's make that clear.
Favorite snake I have ever bred is the Louisiana pine snake, or Pituophis rutheni. So that's a federally enlisted endangered species here in the United States, in the southeast United States, obviously Louisiana, and as well as East Texas. So I'm just lucky to be able to work with that animal. And this year I got eggs for the second year in a row, and they should be due any day now. So I'm pretty pumped about that, and I'm always pumped about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was an animal that was on my list for many years. They're very tough to find up here too, especially even like proper pure. There was a lot of people years ago crossing with other stuff because they were so hard to find. They say there's more of those in captivity than in the wild. Same with black pines. But
I saw Vannon got his hands on some, as well as
he did.
I think it's Stampede or something that's up there,
Yeah,
who has a line that I don't have that I would really like to. I almost need to get them imported back into the United States, because that's
which is funny because they're from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just drive to Louisiana, damn it.
That's generally frowned upon.
Yeah, I know. They're protected. I'm just kidding for anybody that's actually taking it serious.
All right, so we'll touch on a few other things here. CPE canceled until 2021. So that's the Canadian Pet Expo, which is kind of Eastern Canadian shows that Grant Crossman puts on. So that's interesting that it's been canceled till that far along.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be canceling shows until I knew for sure, within a couple months anyway. So that's interesting that I think he would probably have a show. I know he had CPE. They do a Christmas show, so that'd be in December. So
Yeah.
being that they're canceling well into December is interesting. But
I think it's more like you said, it's a money put out
well, it's
issue
risk
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the risk it's not worth it. Limit your risk, right?
Yeah.
Your exposure.
And then Katie came in and asked about update on Reptile Show. It was like in the beginning of the feed. Sorry, late for the conversation. Forgive me if it's been asked. Any chances of an expo this year? The WCRE locally, which I think you are, we did cancel it. I'll try to get an email out to vendors, but it's already been announced on our Facebook page that we're not putting it on. Calgary and Edmonton are up in the air. They're waiting for restrictions to be relaxed, and there's still some time there, so they don't want to cancel just yet.
Yeah.
I feel personally that 2020 is probably a write-off for all reptile shows for the most part, which is unfortunate, at least locally here. I do know that it sounds like BC, because it's early September and they aren't relaxing their numbers. Sounds like that one isn't going to happen. So I feel like pretty much Alberta, well, Western Canada, well, it sounds like all of Canada is probably a write-off for 2020, unfortunately.
Well, there's a lot. The population doesn't warrant it up here too. So this kind of stuff, anything that's going to affect it like this, it makes sense. I mean, it makes maybe more sense in somewhere like the States, where you've got regions that have the entire population of this country in a small area, that they could potentially still put on a show if the restrictions are lifted. Even with enough time to put on a show late in the year, they could probably get away with it. But it doesn't make sense for us up here.
No.
Yeah, people aren't approaching each other with the same caution that you guys are. They're trying to squeeze them in, wherever they can, for sure. As long as it's somewhat legal, I mean, it's happening.
Somewhat illegal.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah.
So getting back to your collection, I think a lot of people who are on here know that you're into corns, and obviously you're into pine snakes as well. So what else do you have in your collection?
I do have some king snakes. So I have Eastern black king snakes, and those are a lot of people know Mexican black king snakes, and it's a totally different snake. So this is Lampropeltis nigra. So it's a lot of the other king snakes that you see in captivity are going to be your common king snakes. So this is a different species altogether. And they start out like black and white, almost like some of your really basic exanthic, like Brooks king snakes or something like
they
that.
Almost look
and
like old rookie too, right? Like speckled.
Oh yeah. See, that's also the thing, is that their range and the speckled, it seems as though you go further south, and then the Eastern black king snake kind of turns into the speckled king snake, and you'll see animals getting more and more pattern, and then more yellow coloration. And it seems to melt, especially around the southeast United States, somewhere like Alabama. But I love the Eastern black king snakes. I also have Brooks king snakes. I have that's really the bulk of everything. I have some different rare rat snakes and stuff like that, as well as carpet python, olive python, and some Indo-Australian stuff.
So I've got a question here for you. So Port City pythons, you obviously started off with pythons initially.
Yep.
Which pythons were those?
They were ball pythons.
Were they? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like so many other people, right?
You don't have to sound embarrassed by saying it.
No, you realize how much of a pain in the ass it is, to be honest.
That's funny. So I've seen Port City Pets too. So is it now? Have you changed it to Port City Pets, or is it still Port City Pythons, or what's the?
Yeah, so I want to say it was probably January. I kind of turned a new leaf in what I work with for the most part, as far as I expanded the business into isopods and bioactive substrates and stuff like that. So I wanted something that encompassed, because Port City Pythons wasn't working already, right? I was mostly corn snakes for really the last 4 or 5 years. So really made no sense. Every single show, someone had a smart ass comment about the pythons and calling corn snakes pythons and all this other stuff. So it's like, this is a good opportunity just to change it all together. So everything's Port City Pet across the board at this point. So
okay,
that's what we're sticking with. I still have some business cards left to say Port City Pythons, but that's about it. Trying to phase it out as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Like Cornell's World is better than kind of typecasting to Cornell's World terrariums because we sell so much more than that. That it's better to be broad than to point yourself in one direction and miss out on some sales because of it.
Keep it general, diversify.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I realize that my interest may wane to a certain degree. So who knows? I have a bunch of geckos right now. So I'm selling some gecko food, some gecko accessories and stuff like that. So it's opening up all these other sectors of me following my own interest too. So I can have fun in my own business and not have.
I see that you have lychees now. Did you bring one to show us? You need to show us a lychee.
No, man, I don't know. It's a little sketchy creature right now. I can go get him real quick though, if you want me to.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, for
they're
sure.
literally my favorite gecko.
We'll talk amongst ourselves and entertain the masses.
The pajama geckos are my favorite.
I need to get another beer anyhow, so be back.
Sure.
I feel like the bathroom break might be in order.
Some iced tea. So we can address some of the questions to us. Well, there you go. So Rach says we can host an expo in Aberdeen, 0 cases. Yeah. So I guess we're doing an Aberdeen expo now. We'll have like 4
population 8.
Yeah, 600, something like that.
Yeah, Saskatchewan. I think
we'd probably get 600 people show up.
Yeah. Saskatchewan's kind of the low point in Canada.
Yeah. They might not let us in though. They'd be like, "Berta, get out of here."
Definitely.
Yeah.
Albertans.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what do we want to talk about?
Well, there's a few questions here too, so let's scroll back real quick and we'll address the CRBE and our questions while Joe's not there.
Yeah.
I always feel bad answering questions about our stuff when we have somebody on to talk about their stuff.
I'm getting some new reptiles soon.
Oh yes. Your favorite?
I'm getting actually not just one, but I'm getting 2.
Monkey tail skinks.
I'm drawing a blank. A monkey tail skinks. Just
skinks.
Got an offer that I couldn't refuse literally yesterday, and be getting a couple young monkey tail skinks. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, plans are in place to make a new cage.
Fancy, fun little build for the shop.
Yeah, fancy, fun builds for the shop.
Yeah.
So it should be cool.
So we'll keep you guys in suspense for that. We'll unveil it when it's ready. But
this week we've actually been working on. We've got 3 potential builds that may happen in the U.S., which would be really cool. Oh, it's still a youngin.
Oh, hello, baby.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm not going to take him out and hold him or anything. He's still he's definitely skittish, especially at night here. But this is
a little lychee. So yeah, tell us what you've got here.
Yeah, this is a New Caledonian species called a Luciana gecko, the largest species of gecko. And pretty much comes from the same place as your crested geckos and your gargoyle geckos, but definitely a different acting animal. They say that they pair for life to a certain degree, and breeders specifically have some. You need to find a pair that's compatible. I've heard it's really not as terribly hard as some people make it out to be, as far as finding 2 compatible animals, but they can really rough each other up if you have ones that aren't compatible. But yeah, I'll be honest. I'm still working with them. Obviously, this is a baby, and so I'm just starting to work with the species. So I really don't know. I would hate to tell you too much about how to keep them or anything like that, because that's what I'm figuring out right now. Really, it's a learning process. Always.
That's what you appreciate. Is you're learning, and these are new to you, and it's exciting, right? Like that's super cool to me. One day I'm going to have some of those.
Yeah, it's like you become a beginner again every single time you get something that's kind of out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing with reptiles is fostering that passion and finding things that you didn't realize that you would become passionate in. So, like for you branching out with geckos, it kind of harbors that interest that got you started in the beginning and just kindles the fire.
Yeah, and if you have the capacity to enjoy snakes, you probably have the capacity to like other reptiles. So
Yeah.
you'll get caught with something else eventually.
You're not wrong. Yeah, it sounds funny.
I mean, it's the same thing for me. Like I never had any snakes, and now at the shop, I think we have 5. So it's not much different.
Yeah, and that probably extends into other hobbies too. I'm sure there's plenty of reptile people with fish and stuff like that.
Yeah, drinking.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing with leeches too is that the care is pretty easy. It's basically room temperature. It's pretty consistent temperature wise. Like the care is very similar to a crested gecko. They're just a lot bigger. And get a lot bigger.
Yeah, I would say it definitely takes a little bit more of knowing what you're doing handling wise, which I think is also part of whenever you kind of go rarer or bigger or something like that. There's always different things to consider.
Well, it's an extra level of caution. You start learning more to read about the animal itself. You're really locked in on their behaviors. With something smaller, you can get away with more, but when it's something that's going to potentially get bigger and can, a full size leechy can do a little bit of damage when it bites you. So you want to make sure that you're cognizant of that, but you're also aware of you don't want to hurt the animal itself. So you want to make sure you're caring for it properly and all that stuff.
Yeah, and like
go ahead.
Like I'm not handling the gecko not because I don't want to be bit. It's because I don't want it to run off, and it's kind of hard to grab, and they're kind of fast, and
It's funny you say that because right before we started the live, our Cuban frog is never out, and it was like right out. So I was like trying to nudge him more out, and he jumped like right out of the cage onto my shoe. And that's the problem with some of these animals is they don't like to be handled. So it's best to like appreciate from a distance.
That's fine to have those.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody was asking, do you know the locality of your lychee?
So I believe this is a new one.
Okay. Which
I'm going to be very straightforward and say that really doesn't matter to me that much. That's why I'm like,
no.
Yeah. I'm just a person who wanted at least one of these things because I've been looking at this gecko for years and was always kind of just blown away.
Literally, Chris is drooling here now because he's in the same boat, but he doesn't have one yet.
And it's funny. I've had opportunities, and I just, for whatever reason, haven't pulled the trigger a few times. I could have, but I was like, no, you know what? I'm gonna wait. But I always shoot myself or kick myself afterwards.
Yeah, that's kind of that's the thing too about being involved in the community is that sometimes you'll have friends that at the right time have the right animals. Like, the right person who wanted something from me has this animal I was able to trade. I probably wouldn't be able normally to just buy this animal for fun.
That's me and Monkey Tails. A deal just came up yesterday for 2 Monkey Tails that I talked to Chris. I'm like, this seems like a really good deal for me, right? He's like, yep, you should do that. So, we're going to have 2 Monkey Tails.
Yeah, because I think it's funny. As at some point, you kind of, I've become very snake rich and money poor, and then you have someone who's gecko rich and money poor but wants to be in snakes, and then sometimes you can cross over and you can both really.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Oh, he's moving.
I got a question for you too. It's a bit off topic. How did you get started on the podcast side of things?
Yeah, so really, I always really enjoyed podcasts, and that doesn't just extend to reptile podcasts. Pretty much, I was moving around a lot for, I would have to go to drill and stuff like that and training for the Army, and I had a pretty decent commute at work at times, and I would always listen to podcasts. And really the first reptile podcast I ever listened to was Reptile Radio with Larry and back in the day, and that was just amazing. That really opened me up to all the different people who were like breeding professionally in ball pythons and stuff like that. So I think that, that was a big part of me at least getting started in ball pythons, because I had corn snakes that I've had for a while. And then, I just took it off the cork bark, and then there's an isopod that I keep in the Leachy's bioactive.
There you go.
That's like 25 cents for running around.
Joe is now bioactive.
Cubaris morena. That's what I put in here. Little C.
It blows my mind how popular isopods have become.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. That's really the main staple of my business at this point, honestly, is selling isopods.
Really?
Yeah, it's the most consistent thing that I do. Of course,
it's just crazy because they're a feeder item. I mean, realistically, and now they're like a collector item, like a ball python would be. It's just interesting to me that market has evolved out of nowhere and just exploded. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I have I have rubber duckies, and
Those are cool.
Those are a lot of the times you're seeing them for like at least $50 each for a little tiny crustacean. Like, it's outrageous for something in which, isopods you can lift up a stone in your backyard and you're gonna see some probably armadillidium and some porcellio and some different species going on there. Even in the backyard here, I can lift up and I find gold phase vulgare, and then I'll find normal phased ones, and I'll find like all different types of cool isopods. So I don't know. It also gets you into looking a little bit deeper on what you have, even in your right in your backyard, because honestly, like things like the rubber duckies, that's not really exactly what I'm into. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that you pay that much for a bug, essentially, even though they're not technically bugs, but it's all in good fun. I had to have them because that's the thing. We got to have them all.
The funny thing is that, I mean, if you're from somewhere that something's not native to, you think the same, or vice versa, you think the same thing. Something's really common where you're from, you don't look twice at it. Whereas somebody, in another country or across the world, where it's rare and now they want that and they'll pay a lot of money for it. You're like, literally, I can find them in my yard. That's everything, though. Like, to somebody else, everything we keep is the same thing, where they're like, really? That's ridiculous. You pay money for that? They're everywhere. I find them.
It's like budgies in Australia.
Yeah.
Pests, but here
so that's all the hobbies. It's kind of the same thing, or all sections of the hobby, with whether it's the insects or the reptiles, anything. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Anzy's asking, what's your favorite isopod?
My favorite, it really depends, because I like isopods for different reasons. So as far as like the most dynamic, my favorite isopod to use in enclosures is definitely like powder oranges or powder blues. They're super active, and they're some of my favorite to keep too, because they are super active. Like, you can put food in there and you can actively see them go and eat it and stuff like that. And you can see them kind of interact with each other. You can see them kind of bumping up against each other and kind of pissing each other off. And then you can see them breeding, and they have all these different kind of a range of behaviors that you wouldn't expect, like you wouldn't be able to see. And then in the geckos enclosure, those Cubaris moreno, which is actually the same species as the rubber duckies, it's just the normal color phase. I really love those for the crested geckos and for gargoyle geckos and the leechies. And then just to look at, dairy cows are excellent, which are just the ones that are white and black. I mean, and they're also active as well. So that's something I like.
What's like for me, I've never really looked into isopods that much. I have kept them, but I feel like I've probably drowned them out with the misting system. But like, what's a lifespan for isopods? Like with those rubber duckies, they're $50 a pop. Like, how long do they live for?
I wish I could tell you for sure, and obviously it's hard to know when you have cultures of so many of them. But I believe the lifespan is typically up to like 3 years or so.
Okay.
And so, and you are seeing a maturity thing. Like you may have to wait 6 months for it to get mature. Like it is it's not as straightforward. It doesn't turn over as quickly as you think it would. The powder oranges do. Within a month, you may have a real thriving culture of them. But things like the rubber duckies may take 6 months to really calm down and mature.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've never kept any isopods as pets, or the whole that whole end of the hobby with a lot of the insects, the tarantulas, the scorpions, the arachnids, the invertebrates and stuff. It's interesting, but I've never delved into it, so it's very foreign to me. So I can't really speak on the species or subspecies. So
I didn't realize kind of until I got into it, until I started bringing them to shows, that they're really kind of a gateway to insects or arachnids or something. Like, people are pretty accepting of these little roly-polies in comparison to, a cockroach or something like that. Isopods, they have gills. They breathe through gills. They have babies that are called mankai, or some people call them monkeys, and they cool. Stay in a pouch underneath the mom's belly. So they're really cool animals, and they're kind of more endearing than you would think.
Well, like you said, they're technically crustaceans, right? Like, they're not even.
Yeah, it's a little land lobster of sorts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and your crustaceans, you guys are eating bugs out of the ocean. Your lobsters and your crabs.
Sea bugs. Sea bugs are delicious, by the way.
Katie Kamen was saying, is it true isopods can eat an entire large shed in a matter of hours? I'll be honest, I'm not into bugs. I got a can of cockroaches as a gift for my skinks. They're still in the can.
Yeah, so you'll see
like that's an exaggeration.
You'll see powder oranges. If a snake sheds, it will be in a bunch of 1 million little pieces by the morning.
Really?
And then if you have a dryer enclosure, giant canyon isopods, they're a bit bigger, probably maybe about as long as a nickel or so, and they actually eat a lot more. They're very protein aggressive, so they really like those sheds, and they'll really take care of a shed in almost overnight. So
really?
So that's why like a species like that is a great species to keep if you have something that stays a little bit drier, and they can get wet and dry, but it's hard to find an isopod, since they have gills and stuff like that too, that really does well in dry conditions, and that's one of them.
So is that a challenge then when you're keeping those? I guess you have to have animals in there that aren't necessarily going to see them as food, right? Like, you don't want to have some kind of insectivorous lizards or whatever that are just going to chow down.
Yeah, or that's, it may be a benefit also, because I keep probably 4 inches or so of bioactive substrate and then leaf litter on top. So if I put 100 isopods in there and they're all in the leaf litter, the chances of them all being predated is pretty slim. If there's one gecko in there, they'll usually keep up. So it can be a nice kind of supplement for a gecko, or they are pretty high in protein and calcium. So it's a really good source of calcium for them.
I guess it would be how productive they are as far as reproduction and all that stuff. If they're eating more than are being produced, then it would just suck.
I think it depends on the size of them too. If you've got a big gecko and these tiny isopods, you don't really see them as much of a prey item versus a critter or a superworm or a roach.
Yeah, and that's something that the dart frog people kind of figured out first, is that this isopod can go with this dart frog species because they're too big actually for the dart frog to eat, so you can always have a steady source of them. If you have dwarf whites, they will feed off them occasionally. So if you're looking for something like that, a small supplement, then that's the way to go. So yeah, there's different situations that kind of warrant different species of isopods.
So we've got a colony of painted agamas here, and they love to, as soon as the lights go out, jump on the screen lids and travel back and forth, and is creating a ruckus. But I don't know if I can get this guy in. This is one of our males, but it's got these crazy blue colors. I don't know. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, you can see it.
But we've got at least one really fat female, so we're wondering if she's got we're hoping she's gravid. So be interesting if we have some babies down the road of these guys.
Have you got some snakes to show us, Joe?
Yeah.
I know Danielle's dying to see some snakes.
Yeah, I have some corn snakes here. As well as some other stuff, but I'll start with this guy. And this is actually an adult male corn snake. He's bred the last 2 years for me. And this is a snow tessera, which is an anery, as well as an amel. And then with the tessera gene, tessera is a pattern gene. And then anery is the reduction of reds and yellows. And then amelanistic is the reduction of black. And it results in this white animal, predominantly white, right? It's kind of an incomplete leucism is what some people call it.
Yeah.
And so you can see there's a bunch of yellow. In person is a little bit more pink. It's kind of a light pinkish color, but you can still see like the stripe from the tessera going down the dorsal.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy.
Yeah. So this guy is named the Brain. This guy is he's actually the guy who goes to all of the shows, and he is the snake that kids typically hold at shows, because I've had him since a baby pretty much doing that and getting so accustomed to handling.
So how old a fella is he?
He is 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, people are always kind of surprised at how small an adult male is. And listen, they do get a bit bigger than this. And this animal may be predisposed to be a little bit smaller. He is a little bit smaller than a lot of my males that I have, especially of that age. But
it's like people, and everybody's different. And same thing, a lot of morphs too. I find a lot of the morphs, just because originally maybe they were bred very early to somebody was really looking at producing them. So they a lot of the morphs I find tend to be a little bit smaller typically.
Yeah, I think I would be lying if I said that there's certain morphs that don't do better than others and that have different quality to them, or that feed better than others, or just have general size and even like head shape. Some head shapes can be different. I think definitely with colubrids, these have been bred, so long in captivity that even tessera is thought that maybe it comes from a Newport king snake. It's the same exact pattern as a Newport king snake. If you cross Newport king snake to a corn snake and then cross it back again, you get a snake that looks almost identical to this tessera.
Oh, and really?
The original animal came off of fauna classifieds without much background information. So very well, this could be a hybrid. I would never tell anyone that it's 100% pure. And quite frankly, if you're in corn snake and you're looking for purity, you may be in the wrong. Yeah. Here in the U.S., we're lucky. We have some breeders who really like locales and F1s, and they have things that are pretty damn close to the wild. But if you're in morphs and you're worried about purity, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, corns, carpets. Yeah, good luck.
I wanted to touch on one thing. Is king snake still around? Is that where people still advertise? Or no, you said fauna, didn't you? Not king snake.
Both of them. Well, both of them are still around. Both of them look exactly the same as they did in 1998. And
crazy.
Yeah, some people. I mean, I put up an ad up there every once in a while, and it still works.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. King snake. I started in probably 97, but I mean the mainstays for the forums were we had a Canadian one, and then it was king snake, and that's kind of cool that it is actually still going.
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of nostalgic at this point.
Fauna was all about the board of inquiry for us.
And the classifieds.
Yeah.
More in the U.S. So what do we got here?
Yeah, I brought this is actually a clutch that just hatched out. Trying to figure out a way to.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. So this is actually the Brain's babies. You can see all those little pink guys right there are snow tesseras. And then you got a bunch of aneries in there. This is an anery het snow to the Brain, who's a snow tessera. And I got really unlucky. And you can see there's a normal anery in there, which is almost impossible odds. Not in a good way.
The one thing I tell people that are new to the hobby or have never been to a reptile expo is the second they go to the reptile expo, they're never going to look at deli containers or anything the same ever again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, plastic containers really come in handy, especially with the baby colubras. I mean, that's what I put babies in takeout containers, in these black takeout containers, and that's pretty much what they live in for the first 3 months or so. I don't know if you can see, these are actually some pretty big babies coming out of here. But I mean, babies are really, maybe 3 to 5 grams or so. So these guys are tiny, and they will get out of pretty much, if you give them something big, a big enclosure, they can figure their way out of it somehow. Unless there's some enclosures that have screen or sliding screening. I'm losing a baby, and I'm losing my mind.
Grab your babies.
and they have sliding screens up, and they are essentially escape proof for these guys. But
keeping them in small enclosures is probably the best bet to start out.
Well, and they can find their way, like you said, they can find their way out. I remember I had to get a special made enclosure from you breeding garter snakes because the babies are so small in certain species that I couldn't have front opening anything. It had to be top opening just because they would find the smallest crack they could squeeze through. And I had an entire litter of babies in my basement one season because of that. So I rectified that in a hurry. So that's pretty smart.
Yeah, I think it's a gap in the market as far as enclosures go, is that every single show that I go to, I tell people who buy the snakes, hey, like, no matter what you do, like, just make sure that this thing does not escape. Do everything that you can to make it, that it's not able to get out. But all these enclosures that are on the market for the most part that are readily available, a little baby corn snake will get out of it. And I mean, even they sell them at Petco and PetSmart and all of that, and they sell baby corn snakes there, and they put them in 10-gallon tanks and they're gone. I mean, even a large percentage, more than I'd like to admit, of my customers, even though I tell them about it, they end up getting out in one way or another. And we need some type of enclosure in which, is readily available, is cheap, and will kind of keep these guys in at no matter what size.
It's hard to find containers that are tight, that don't have soft lids that they can squeeze out of, that clamp down. That's always the struggle. Baby containers.
Yeah. And once you find something, as a breeder, I can go with the takeout containers, but that's not, that's probably not the best option for someone picking up a pet from me, right? So I need to have something a little bit bigger and a little bit more pretty for someone who wants to keep it on their bedroom dresser or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So what are your plans moving forward with the hobby? What are you looking to do with your breeding plans moving forward, down the road? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so I'm really looking to, I'm definitely going to pare down some of my corn snake projects. So I have those real, probably 3 or 4 projects in which before they even come out, they're pre-sold and are like sold out every single year. And I really want to focus on things like that, because it's very obvious that's people are telling me that's my strong suit, right? And I like those animals too. And quite frankly, they probably sell out because I show them off so much. But so it's like, clearly I really like those animals. And for the last few years, I've been producing some clutches in which I'm doing it just to kind of get the numbers going. And now I think I'm at the point in my collection where I need to dwindle down numbers and focus on a few projects, and the more popular projects and the projects that I enjoy as well. And the isopods are taking up a lot of my time, and shipping them and things like that. I'm shipping things every day. So my focus is changing based on both what I'm enjoying and what people are telling me they enjoy too. So it's kind of, I think a lot of times the common advice in the reptile hobby is pick the projects that you like and go with that.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, if you like something, then you can get someone into a species if you're producing 10 of them. If you're producing 100 of them, I don't know, unless you go wholesale. But So you kind of gotta listen to people too. You gotta give people what they like as well as what you like, and kind of find your balance there. At least that's what I feel.
It really shows though when you're really passionate about it and you're excited about it and you enjoy those particular animals. Those are the ones that, for me, in my experience, long term, do the best with. Where really enjoy working with them. You know a lot about them. You're excited to talk about them. You're a lot more animated when you're talking about them, and that's what gets people more excited about them. If you're looking at the numbers and stuff, and those are the ones that you might be okay for a season or two, but it never plays out long term. So that advice holds true.
I think you see it in trade shows especially. I mean, they can be super passionate with the animals that they have, but when you've got a table full of these animals and you compare a guy who's standing up talking and is animated and you can see the passion, people are going to gravitate to those people versus the guy who's got his arms folded and he's pissed off because he's only sold one snake today, but he doesn't want to talk to anybody. Like,
staring at his phone.
Yeah, the people who are like wanting to share that passion with people in terms of, it may take an hour and a half to teach this 9-year-old all the ins and outs of this corn snake, but I mean, that family's going to come back to you for all their advice and, maybe their supplies and everything else. And you're fostering the hobby too. Like, we need this hobby to flourish, and the more education and the more passionate we are, and it's not about the money, I think the better the hobby is going to do as a whole.
Yeah, I think we kind of underestimate. I think a lot of people see us as reptile people, as people who aren't social, people who don't necessarily like people. We like animals more than people. It may be true in a lot of cases, but also I think it takes the people who I know who are successful in this industry are people who also like to talk to people and also like to get people interested in the reptiles and like to spread the knowledge and kind of build the community around, whether it be their species of snake look at Morelia Python Radio. They built, a giant community around just a specific genus of python, which I think is really cool. And you can do that.
It's contagious. Like, when somebody's passionate about it and they're speaking with that passion, it's super contagious. And even people that aren't even into reptiles will suddenly listen. Like, what are you so excited about? Like, what's going on here? Maybe I'm missing something. Like, that energy and stuff that people just latch onto. And I noticed, and just kind of circle back a bit, Chris had mentioned in the chat earlier that the expos are a great opportunity to teach. Like, that's an educational tool as well. And that's for a lot of people. Like, it's either the brick and mortar stores, and there's less and less of those because of the online world. So it becomes the expos where people learn about and buy their first reptiles. And they get to talk to people that work with them and are passionate about them. And that rubs off. And that makes a huge impact on people when they see this guy talking about these animals. He loves them. He's passionate about them. They learn about them from the guy that's worked with them for a number of years or whatever, or girl or whatever. But that really resonates, So that's why I feel, again, to circle back to the expos, that's really important for the educational component too.
And you also can't really prejudge anyone. You can't write people off. You need to give everyone attention and be able to teach everyone, which I know takes a lot of patience and it can be really, really tough. But I think something like take Danielle, for example, Danielle and Michael. Yeah. They saw your show, they get interested, they reach out to you guys. And then ultimately they go to me, they get a corn snake, and now they post all the time about their corn snake on Facebook. So not only
Raphael,
and where they got it from.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and yes, that benefits me, but also I have taught them how to keep their snake and how to learn from their snake essentially, and now they are educating the people that they're friends with. I mean, they're posting it on their personal Facebooks in which just their friends from home are on. It's not snake people. It's not all snake people and stuff like that. So, your customers eventually turn into people who are keeping and breeding and educating as well. So it's keeping that snowball going, basically.
Yeah, well, it's nice to see that. It's funny, like I said, being in the industry for so long, it's cool to see those people who are first-time customers that maybe at some point in their career or whatever you want to call it, they become fellow vendors and they're selling their animals, and those kids as like preteens or teenagers or whatever, and seeing them at 20 and loving the hobby and selling animals, like it's really cool to see.
See them passionate and educating people. And here's a comment here from Devin McKenzie. One of my favorite things about working expos is introducing kids to the reptile world and seeing them light up. And for me, that's one of the best things ever, is when you get a chance to sit and talk with some kids or somebody who's maybe afraid or unsure, or even the kids that are already seem to be into them, and you can educate them and you sit down and talk to them and maybe help them understand or just get them into it. That really just gets me going.
Yeah. Well, to add to that, I would say even, to be one better is at the reptile shows, those people who are actually scared of reptiles, and whether it's you or another vendor, like getting them to hold a snake for the first time, like, as soon as they finally do it, they're like addicted, and like, by the next show, they're probably looking to buy their first snake.
Like, it's not this big, scary, slimy monster that I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I always advocate to bring an animal for the public to hold. And I know people don't like that because you're really opening yourself up to, different things that, say mites that can be passed on from a different vendor. Obviously, that's not good. But if you bring an adult animal, you can quarantine that animal after. But I mean, it goes such a long way, whether it's education or whether it's being able to sell. It's really hard to sell a baby corn snake that's so small that it fits in your hand and people are a little nervous. And I can say, hey, here's what an adult is. This is how common it will be as an adult if you do all the right things. And it really changes people's minds. So I think getting up that opportunity would be selling everything short and kind of and not making the best use of your time while you're at a reptile show.
Yeah, and like for me, example, as a vendor at a lot of the shows, if I'm selling animals there, or even if I'm not, I'll try and bring some stuff for display to show people. And if I've got babies, I'll try and bring one of the parents there. So I'm like, here's the babies, here's an adult version of this. Like, this is the parent, this is the mom, the dad, whatever. This is what this grows into. So here's the full size, the adult, here's the, all that stuff, basic general temperament. They're all different, obviously, but that makes a big impact too. Because again, like you said, you see this little tiny baby, that's fine. When you see, a 5 or 6 foot or whatever snake, that's different. Or it's not as big. You hear it's a 5 foot snake. Well, it's curled up. It doesn't look, you think it's this monster. Oh, it's as big as me. Well, it's really not that big. So it's just showing them, what you're getting into. Here's what you're starting with. Here's what you're getting into. You want to show them that kind of stuff. Like, to me, that's a big thing.
Well, at the same time, showing the commitment level too. Like corn snakes and ball pythons, those are easy, and the adults aren't so daunting. But for example, tortoises, it's great to see some people bringing an adult sulcata that they've got these cute little babies, and God, they're freaking cute when they're like the size of a toonie. But you got to realize that they get 100 pounds and live.
They could be up to 200 pounds.
Well, exactly.
150 is probably.
I know in shows around here, they're starting to, like, we haven't sold sulcatas. We don't sell iguanas. Tegus and monitors are starting to get a little more restricted in areas that they are actually legal. But that's probably a good thing. But, having them there are some people that are going to be passionate enough to put in the time to keep them properly. So I'd hate to see them not at shows, to be honest. But I do think that we need to be a little more limiting on certain animals that are sold.
What I am incredibly jealous about is that you guys can have Fiji iguanas. I mean, that always blows my mind.
They're very tough to come by up here. There's a handful of them up here.
So, funny story about Fiji's. At the 2019 January Super Show, we drove down there, so we got to hang with some friends in San Diego. Because of their creation, we got behind tour at San Diego Zoo, and it was just heartbreaking because they have so many Fiji iguanas and they're just getting rid of the eggs because they can't do
because of the restrictions. So their program is so successful they're producing so many babies, they have to freeze and throw out so
All of
many
them.
eggs. They've got all these cages behind the scenes of these beautiful, thriving Fijian iguanas that they're not allowed to sell, or there's all the zoos that have them have enough that they can't distribute them. So they're handcuffed to the point of they could produce so many more if they wanted to. And even what they do produce, they have to limit because they've only got so much space and so much room. It's just heartbreaking where these could easily, and they could fund a lot of projects and stuff they're doing if they were allowed to sell them to private collectors, even if they were like handpicked specific private collectors, but they're not allowed to because of all the restrictions and stuff. So that was so heartbreaking. It was awesome and heartbreaking at the same time. Like, it was great to see, and they're just amazing animals, but that just killed us. We're like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, there's people who've gone to prison just to work with those things. So,
and maybe if we had a captive bred population, people wouldn't have any reason to smuggle them, and therefore no one would go to prison.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, those people probably go to prison anyway for a different species, but
yes and no. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's obviously an element of that, but it was just to see that we were very conflicted. You're like, this is awesome, and this also sucks so much at the same time.
And
you're like, yeah, we literally freeze eggs.
You guys got to work with one in the show as well, right?
Yeah, Jason's got one or two of them.
Yeah,
I don't remember if that actually made.
Did it make the show?
I don't
It must have. If
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah, Jason does a lot of reptile education, and at the time he had one. I don't know if he's got one or two now. There is one or two people in Canada breeding them, obviously in limited numbers. So they are somewhat available, but definitely not. You don't see them often. Before that, I had seen like maybe two of them before that. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it was just cool to be able to go behind the scenes at the San Diego Zoo because I had never been there before in my life. I've grown up always hearing about this world famous San Diego Zoo, so it was cool to go down there. And part of it was because the people we know was the biggest part. A little bit was the show, so it was like, these are the guys in the show, so we got to kind of go behind the scenes and see some stuff. So it was really cool.
Yeah, seeing their venomous collections, it's kind of interesting because you think of the zoo as you just assume that what they have is all on exhibit. But I mean, they probably have twice the amount of animals that are in their back rooms that maybe aren't, or either breeding or they don't have room to display them or whatever. But like the collection that they had that, the general public doesn't get to see is insane. Yeah.
On display, and some get rotated through, be on display, and then to go back to kind of have some privacy and people looking.
Well, I mean, and to go to that point is kind of interesting too, because there's a lot of haters about zoos, but they're very cognizant about that. Yes, they do lose animals here and there, but I think they lose a lot more animals in the wild than what these guys are propagating in captivity, and they are actually worried about their well-being and giving them enrichment and proper caging and everything else.
People don't get into that profession. Like, you don't make a lot of money doing that. That's a passion. Like, that's people that genuinely care about the animals. They get into that, and that's what people don't understand is they look at the big picture. It's just a corporation, whatever. But the people that work there and have spent their lifetimes, being educated and learning about these animals so that they can work with these animals, and it's not something that they make a lot of money with, but it's because they want to do it and they love these animals. So like more so even than a lot of us do. Like they're just so focused on that. They've got to the point of getting this, the education, spending the money, the time, the commitment, all that stuff so that they can go do that. That gets lost on a lot of people and they want to just blow it off. Zoos suck and but you know what? Like they do a lot of good conservation work and people seeing that stuff, if you're seeing it, you're going to be more, you're going to want to spend some money to help the conservation if you can see those animals. it's just pictures, you see it, you don't care. But you can go there and see the animals. People are going to want to do more to help protect them. So it does help a lot.
And I think that to take it further, we can get the animals actually in people's hands, which I think is the second, that's even better, to be honest. I mean, not saying that we do as good as zoos, not even close, right? But
no, but I think for what we do, absolutely.
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited about in the reptile industry right now, and I'm sure you guys see it, obviously, since you're doing enclosures and you guys built a bunch of these, is like people are into now like small scale zoo quality enclosures. Like people aren't doing the sweater box with newspaper anymore. People are really getting intricate.
It's the European model, right? Like they always say, even with like I used to be in the cabinet industry, they said we were 10 years behind Europe in the cabinet industry. It's the same with keeping animals. 10, 20 years ago, there was more of a focus on naturalistic steps and stuff, and people are coming back around to that now. Here in North America, becoming more interested in that. You get into it, you learn about it, and then where do you go from there? Well, the only direction you can go is to try and recreate the natural habitats. And you want it as a showpiece in your home. Instead of keeping it in your basement, hidden away, you want it as a centerpiece. It's a furniture piece. You want it to look like a slice of the jungle or the desert or whatever, African savanna. So you want to build that slice of nature in your house, and for the animals, to mimic their natural habitat. And that's sort of the next level of keeping animals, really.
I think for me, I think that's what gravitated me to the frogs mostly, because you don't keep them in racks and you don't keep them on paper towel. Like if you want them to thrive, you're setting them up in bioactive, like naturalistic habitats. So for me, it was almost like not a nice balance, but like I loved aquariums, but to me they were boring. I liked seeing them, but
can't play with fish.
You can't. Well, yeah. I mean, I just felt like there's more activities with the frogs, and then having to worry about how to keep this plant alive, in addition to making sure my frogs were well fed, became a challenge. And it wasn't just turning having your lights on a timer and making sure you fed your fish like once a day or whatever. So I do see that the aquarium hobby, is cool for some people, but to me it was like a little bit lacking, and the frogs and all the other reptiles became way more interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who kept fish growing up and stuff like that, and I've been flirting with the fact of having a fish tank again, right? I think I'll get to it eventually. I think I kind of I like being able to visually watch the animals, and that goes for the fish, but it also now goes for the animals that I've set up in bioactive enclosures, the ones that I have in my like actual PVC cages and stuff like that. I see that they're just a lot more visually stimulated. When I come in the room, they're kind of checking me out, and they've taken on a different personality than they had when they were in a tub. Yeah. And so I think that's enough for me to want to keep on doing this and pursuing naturalistic vivariums and kind of trying to take even to the next level.
And there's different levels of that, and people get they want to min-max everything. It's either you got to be tubs of newspaper and paper towel, or bioactive giant greenhouses. Well, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like there's graduating scale, and there's different things you can do. I hate the word enrich, but to enrich stuff and to have different degrees of that, where it's naturally looks natural to you, but maybe isn't, quite to that level. But you can still do that on smaller scales. You don't have to necessarily go all the way, but I find myself graduating back more to that again. I went that way before, I keep going back and forth, but that's fun for me, right? I want my animals to have great lives, and I want to enjoy them, and I want them to have their best life. And then, but also with a level of me being able to enjoy it too. That's secondary to me, to the animals, as I'm sure with pretty much everybody. But you still it's something you want to be able to sit back and look. It's like when you have fish, right? It's so soothing to sit and watch the fish. It's the same thing with the animals when they're interacting and have their natural behaviors. There's something really cool about that.
Yeah, and it's I think there's also something to like a bioactive tub or something. You know, you can do a tub bioactive, you can do a cage with newspaper. Which one's better? I don't know. But for me, my corn snakes like to burrow, so I love to have substrate.
Yeah.
To have newspaper would be like, I feel like I would be robbing them of something. But there's also species that couldn't give two shits about the substrate. They're not going to go burrow anywhere. You know, they're going to stay on top of it the whole time anyhow. So
and that's the key. There's no one end result. Like there's so many different ways, and there's so many different species, and there's so much different stuff you can do with it all.
And that's why we keep on doing this, because there's always more stuff to do and learn and tweak and try to get better at.
I actually think it's kind of interesting though, considering myself an old hobbyist, which is kind of funny now, but like if you consider the way of like these guys who are new to the industry coming in, I mean, they're asking questions, but apparently they already know the answer, which is funny. But I feel like you're never going to know the right answer. You're just you should just be evolving to the needs of the animals and learning as you go. And I mean, Chris touched on it earlier, but there's no one right way to keep anything.
You open that can of worms again. Joe's mom is here.
Oh.
Yes, hi, Mom. My brother is on the couch to my left. Don't worry, he's still alive. Barely made it last night, but he did sleep with the shoes on. But he was spared. So, yes.
Well, and I'm going to have to get going soon.
We're going to probably wrap this up, but have you got any final words or anything you'd like to say, Pump? Give us a heads up on your podcast, whatever your social media stuff. Like, here's your chance, man.
Yeah, if you guys want to go check me out, it's Port City Pet on Instagram. That's really where I do most of my pictures. You can really check out my whole collection there, as well as you can follow me on YouTube, Port City Pet, and as well as Port City Python's podcast, From the Ground Up podcast, where all podcasts are found. You can see where you can listen to an awesome podcast with these guys right here, with Greg and Chris a little bit back, and we'll have to do another one eventually.
I know.
PortCityPet.com. You can check out Isopods, bioactive substrates, stuff like that. So, I appreciate you guys having me on, and it's the heat of the hatching season. So, guys, give it a follow, and there's going to be a lot of things coming up very soon.
Absolutely, we'll have you on when you got a lot of babies and stuff too. After, and I love how his mom shows up. We're all like, "Oh, we got to go.
Time to go put the apple juice away."
We got to behave now. Joe's mom's here.
Don't worry about her. She'll be all right. She's heard it all.
Thanks for joining us, and definitely we'll try and do this again. We have fun chatting with you, and
absolutely. Thanks again for being you. You broke our podcast cherry. You were our first.
Yeah, I mean, was that something
that
you were open to? I mean, to begin with, I mean, was it something where did you listen to podcasts or anything like that?
Yeah, I had other podcasts to listen to, but it's funny. I didn't listen to a lot of reptile podcasts at the time. So, when you reached out, we're like, okay, this seems cool. And we checked into it a bit. We're like, not that it would have mattered either way, but we're like, awesome, let's do it. Like, we're pretty easygoing. Like, we'll talk to anybody. But no, it was so much fun. Like, we had a blast. Well, it's funny because it was like a couple of hours that we talked. And then even afterwards, I remember we talked for quite a while after with a bunch of stuff. So that was so much fun. Like, he seemed like such a great guy. So we were pretty happy with that. That was a lot of fun.
I appreciate it, man. And I'm glad that now that kind of opened you up. I see you guys do lives all the time and stuff like this, which is super awesome.
I can't remember. Did we do?
We just keep it informal though. Like as far as podcasts go, I don't think we're at that level. We just try and do our lives, and it's sort of more of a we picture it as if we were just hanging at a pub, having some drinks, talking with people that we like.
Funny thing is, with all COVID, I mean, I feel like that's what we're missing the most is just the camaraderie. And I think with these lives, at least with ours, it's funny you asked, like, what's what are we going to talk about? We're like, we don't know. What do we want to talk about? And it's kind of in the sense that, we like hanging out, shooting the shit, and having a beer with a friend. And I think that the way our lives go is more in the sense that it's just guys hanging out, talking shop basically. And, people get a glimpse in that and can ask questions here and there. But I mean, the biggest thing is just promoting the hobby and trying to get that exposure out there as much as possible.
Yeah. And I think you guys, whether it was, the show and then what you guys are doing now. So, I appreciate you guys doing it as well.
What you see is what you get with us. And we try and keep it kind of positive. We don't want to, harp on the negative. There's enough negative stuff going on out there. So we try and really focus on, have some fun. We'll bust each other's balls a bit. But, at the end of the day, we all love this hobby. We're all passionate about it. We want to kind of put that forward. And that's the light we want to shine on the hobby is everybody's there's a lot of regular guys. It's not the weird, creepy fringe that the general public sees the hobby as. There's that too. And we're part of that too. But I'm just saying, it's all encompassing, and this hobby is a lot bigger than people think. So we just want to shine some light on that and have some fun, have a few laughs.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for everybody hanging in there through an hour and a half, and we'll try and get another one of these going in the next week or so. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, guys.